everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to be talking about the H5N1 bird flu. Earlier today, I was looking at X and there's all these posts coming out talking about this, and the most recent person to contract this, and I don't know if this is going to turn into a thing, but I don't know about you, but for me, ever since 2020, I've always wondered in the back of my mind, are we going to have another pandemic? And if we do, is it going to be the type that closes down everything and it shuts down society like it did back in 2020? So I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a very real possibility and even likely. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you expect that there's going to be another pandemic? So I was kind of thinking about this, and actually I just spoke to Jen from Christian Fire Poppy channel. This is her channel right here. Make sure to subscribe to her and also check out her most recent video because that video is about what we're talking about, and she has a lot of interesting thoughts about this. You can also find her on my homepage. If you go down to featured channels, she's right here. But we were talking about this, and she was thinking about, like, is she ready if this happens again? Like, temporally, like, what did we learn from the first time? Is there something that you could do to prepare for the next time if it happens? And we were talking, and I was talking also about the spiritual aspect, because, you know, I feel like sometimes the Lord, he'll give us like a practice exam, and then after that, he'll give us a final exam. And, you know, if we do have another one, then it may be the final exam. And with the practice exam, you know, 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic, I don't know that we did very well. Probably any of us. There was a lot of contention, a lot of divisiveness, and there were other things going on that year that exacerbated things, but it was a very contentious year. President Nelson recently talked about how we need to be peacemakers. That was his main talk of a recent general conference. And I think that we really need to look back at our behavior in 2020 and also 2021 and think about how we can do better this next time, both temporally and spiritually. But we have to be disciples of Christ and not be agents of chaos, but stability, and bring peace and harmony. And maybe if we think about it that way and we prepare ourselves, even if this pandemic is worse, maybe we'll weather it better if we prepare and we learn, you know, from these lessons from the first time. So anyway, as I was talking to her, she was bringing up all these really interesting details about this outbreak, or whatever you want to call this. And I want to share some of those with you right now. Before I do, I want to go off on a little tangent. Okay. So I have a subscriber named Floyd Gowans. He's the one that took this picture. We were both at the Kirtland Temple for the eclipse, and I met him in person. And then he texted me recently because I did a video about this tornado outbreak that we've been experiencing in the United States. And he pointed out something really interesting. So I already did a video going over this CNN article. The U.S. is in the middle of an exceptional tornado streak. And it points out that, quote, it started in Utah of all places, end quote. And you can see this yourself. Just go to NOAA's National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center, and you have this first tornado reported in the Salt Lake Valley. It was a landspout tornado, but it is considered a tornado. You go the day before, there's nothing for the entire, well, at least for the lower 48 states. But things kick off on April 25th, starting in Utah, and then for 20 days straight, there are tornadoes in the United States. For every single day for 20 days, there's a tornado in the United States. And Floyd pointed out that there wasn't, that the streak ended on the 15th. So the 15th would have been the 21st day, but it stopped. And he points out that that day this year was the 195th anniversary of the Aaronic priesthood being restored to the earth. The church, Church News did an article about this, and I do think that's very interesting because the next day things picked up again and we had tornadoes, and then the next day, and then there's one more break on the 18th I haven't looked to see if there's any significant thing on this day, or if it's an anniversary of anything. But then after the 18th, it continues up until today. I'm recording this on the 22nd. So that's a really good observation. And thank you, Floyd, for that observation, as well as for this amazing photo of the Kirtland Temple with the eclipse in the background. This is a phenomenal photo. I'm so glad that you took this. I did Photoshop it because there's power lines that go across here. I hope the church is able to talk to the city and take care of that. It's a real eyesore, but anyway, I took those out with Photoshop, and here you go. Make sure to follow me on Facebook. Okay, so now let's talk about the details of this H5N1 bird flu thing that's going on. All right, so we're on the CDC website for current H5N1 bird flu situation in dairy cows. And it says a multi-state outbreak of HPAI H5N1 bird flu in dairy cows was first reported on March 25th, 2024. Okay, so that's a really interesting date. You know why? Well, this year, that also happens to be the day that the church reopened the Kirtland Temple to the public under the ownership of the church. It was purchased on March 5th, reopened to the public on the 25th of March this year. But another really interesting thing about that date is if we go back to 2020, guess what happened on that day? First Presidency temporarily closes all temples. Dear brothers and sisters, after careful and prayerful consideration and with the desire to be responsible global citizens, we have decided to suspend all temple activity church-wide at the end of the day on March 25th, 2020. So I don't need to tell you that this was a major victory for Satan, that the temples worldwide were closed for a period of time. The work of salvation in that arena was halted. And so it's fitting, and I don't know if, the Lord planned it this way or what, but getting the Kirtland Temple back into the church, reopening it under the ownership and the name of the church on March 25th, almost is kind of like showing Satan like we win. You may have won a battle, but ultimately we win. This temple that's been out of the hands of the church for so long has now miraculously come back into the church. And we've talked about this. It's interesting because in Doctrine and Covenants, it talks about a curse that was placed on Kirtland. And I can't remember at this point if it was 1979, but it was somewhere around there. Ezra Taft Benson lifted that curse. And that's when things started. That was around the time that things were going on with Community of Christ, which I think ultimately led to this day, March 5th, when the temple came back into possession of the church. But anyway, so you have this major victory over Satan with the temple coming back into the church on the same day that the temples were closed down in 2020. Very interesting. Okay, so you have that. And then let me just point out, it was at this time, if we go to my second coming, my spreadsheet called Timeline Second Coming, the way that it worked was this. Okay, so you had an earthquake on the 18th of March, which was the 77th day of the year of all days. And the earthquake caused the angel Moroni on top of the Salt Lake Temple to drop his trumpet, right? So symbolically, it's not hard to see that that's like a metaphor, a symbol, an allusion to the warning call stopping or ceasing or whatever. 2 days later, on the 20th of March, the missionaries were called home, and missionary work really took a hit. It was hindered, right? It's like their trumpet fell, so to speak. And then 5 days after that, that's when all the temples worldwide closed. So a major time of victory for Satan. You have all this stuff, the work in the temple ceases, missionary work is hindered, and there's a physical damage to the Salt Lake Temple, right? Well, now here we are 4 years later. And what's interesting is the Kirtland Temple comes back into the church. Um, here's pictures of the angel Moroni when he dropped his trumpet, and you can see his gray skies, right? And the day that they took it off, gray skies, overcast. But now, this year, in April, the angel Moroni is fixed, and the Salt Lake Temple is under renovation, and he's placed back on top of the temple, and you have just a bright sunny day and what looks like a cloudless sky. Just a stark contrast from the day that he was taken down. So I don't know what this year is going to hold for us. Right now we're exploring the possibility of a pandemic breaking out again. I don't know if that's going to take place. Personally, for me, 2020, this is a pretty good representation of 2020 in my personal life, and probably for a lot of you too. It was not a good year. It was the year that we moved to Kansas, so that was good. But there were a lot of things that went very wrong that year for me. And this year has been the complete opposite, starting with New Year's Day. If you'll remember how things went, with the videos I put out around that time. Just things have been really, really good. The Kirtland Temple is back. We've had this amazing aurora display just like a week or two ago. There is a lot of like crazy things going on in the world, but I feel like there is some kind of like parallel or correlation between 2020 and 2024. We've already gone through 2020. We know what happened in that year. 2024, there were a lot of things pointing to this year. I think that they were pointing to the Kirtland Temple, but we have that's come back into the church. We had the eclipse, and then just all sorts of stuff going on, right? So anyway, so you have these interesting things, okay? Another interesting parallel, and this one, this is really weird. Okay, so I'm really big into signs in the heavens, and a very strange sign that happened began November of 2019. Just a month before the COVID-19 pandemic started. You see that right here? And then I track it here in column G. Well, in November of 2019, there's a very prominent star in the sky. It's the right shoulder of Orion, of the Orion constellation. And there's a lot of interesting things about that star. I'm not going to mention them all here, but I'll put a link for the video where I do talk about it all. I'll put it in the description box below, because more and more, I feel like that star specifically is meant for signs for the church. But you'll just have to watch that video in case you missed it. But this is one of them. It went through this event called the Great Dimming, where there was a debris cloud between the star and Earth, and so it made the star appear to dim, and they called it the Great Dimming. It only lasted for a few months. So it started just a month before the pandemic started. And then it went until March, the month where Angel Moroni dropped his trumpet, missionaries called home, temples closed worldwide, etc., right? So it's almost as though the Great Dimming, and that's like another very visually symbolic sign where you have something that's bright, something that's once bright, just like the church, preaching the gospel to the world, and then it dims, just like how the pandemic dimmed the work of the church. Okay, so whatever. So that happened. Very interesting. Well, it just so happens that right now, this is earthsky.org. Betelgeuse is dimming again. When will it explode? Let's read just a little bit about this. On March 14th, 2024, so it's not on the 25th, but it is in the month of March. So at the same time that you have this thing going on with the cows, like the disease transferring to cows, and Kirtland Temple coming back to the church. So in that same month, on March 14th, 2024, the American Association of Variable Star Observers, or AAVSO, reported that the star Betelgeuse in the constellation Orion has dimmed by about 0.5 magnitude since late January. Betelgeuse is the nearest red supergiant star to Earth. It's a variable star, so a change in its brightness isn't unusual, but Betelgeuse is now dimmer than it's been for several years. It is possible we're going to have another great dimming of Betelgeuse, such as the one is it possible we're going to have another great dimming of Betelgeuse, such as the one in 2019 to 2020? If so, it is a sign of instability in its, if so, is it a sign of instability in this old red supergiant star? And could it mean Betelgeuse will explode soon? Now, if there ever was a sign, that would be a sign. The Orion constellation is iconic. It's one of the easiest to recognize in the sky. It really sticks out. And so if that star did go supernova, oh my gosh. And by the way, you guys, I already know about this other star that's predicted to go supernova. It's like I can't remember if it's like a neutron star, I think, and it has like a periodic like nova that it goes through every several years, and they're saying that it's probably going to happen between now and I think September. I've done a video about it. I'll put a link for that in the description box below, but I do already know about that. But back to this. This is a different star. This is Betelgeuse. It continues. We know that someday Betelgeuse will explode as a supernova. Then it might become as bright as a full moon and possibly be visible in broad daylight. So that would be pretty dramatic, especially if that coincided, if it had a great dimming along with this pandemic, if it becomes a pandemic, and then you have a supernova, that would be pretty dramatic. But whatever the case, it's dimming right now. And the last time it dimmed, there was a pandemic. So let's just, look at that and pay attention. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but that'd be very interesting. So you see these like really interesting parallels, and God is a God of order. We've seen a lot of like parallel events and bookends, or what you might call bridges, like suspension bridge type things. You have one side of the bridge with the tower, the other side of the bridge with the tower. So that'd be like two events that are similar and going across the bridge. I think that is essentially, because that's Elder Stevenson talked about bridges in this last general conference, and he used the term bookends. And I think that, and he's the one that in I think it was October 2017 general conference, he pointed out that the 2017 eclipse happened on the same day as President Monson's birthday. He said that in general conference. So he pointed that out, and now we've just had this other eclipse, and he's talking about bridges and bookends, and I think there's something to that. As far as the eclipses go, I think we're on the other side of the bridge. But we'll see what happens if there's a pandemic. Okay, so with that, let's just learn just a little bit more about what's going on here. This is the first time that these bird flu viruses have been found in cows. So that's why that's a significant date. It transferred from birds to cows on April 1st. And Jen, by the way, has more to say about April 1st. I'll leave that for her to explain. So go check out her video. On April 1st, CDC confirmed one human HPAI AHN1 infection that had exposure to dairy cows in Texas that were presumed to be infected with the virus. While thought to be rare, this exposure to HPAI H5N1 bird flu virus is the first instance of likely mammal to human transmission. On May 22nd, CDC reported a second human case in a person who had exposure to infected dairy cows in Michigan. Okay, so this year we've had two, one in Texas, one in Michigan, people that had exposure to dairy cows. So you might be like, well, that's not really that concerning, is it? Well, let me just read you a few more things. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but first let's read this. This is NPR. A Michigan farm worker is diagnosed with bird flu in second U.S. case tied to dairy cows. A Michigan dairy worker has been diagnosed with bird flu, the second human case associated with an outbreak in U.S. dairy cows. The worker had been in contact with cows presumed to be infected. Now this is what this person experienced. Mild eye symptoms and has recovered. Okay. But what we learned last time is that with COVID-19, it doesn't have to be like the scariest thing in the world for everybody to lose their minds and everything to get shut down. So I presume that it could happen again. Okay, and then later on it says the first case happened in late March. So there it is. There's March again. When a farm worker in Texas was diagnosed in what officials called the first known instance globally of a person catching this version of bird flu from a mammal. Okay, so rather than from a bird, from a mammal. That patient also reported only eye inflammation and recovered. Now there was a third one, but it was in 2022. The new case marks the third time a person in the United States has been diagnosed with what's known as type A H5N1 virus. In 2022, a prison inmate in a work program picked it up while killing infected birds at a poultry farm in Montrose County, Colorado. His only symptom was fatigue, and he recovered. That predated the virus's appearance in cows. So I guess technically in the United States 3 times, but 2 times this year. And these 2 times it was from a cow rather than from a bird. Okay, but there's more. Yale Medicine says the good news is that so far, and I highlight so far, H5N1 is not considered a major public health threat in the U.S. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has categorized the risk to the general public as low, but continues to monitor the situation carefully. Quote, in the short term, there's very little threat, says Yale Medicine infectious disease specialist Scott Roberts, MD. Continuing, he says, in the long term, in the coming years or decades, however, I'm much more concerned. Okay. He gives 2 reasons. One is that there has been a mortality or death rate of about 50% in almost 900 people around the world who have been infected with bird flu between 2003 and 2024. However, 50% may be an overestimate, Dr. Roberts says, adding that there may be cases where people have no symptoms, are only mildly symptomatic, or haven't sought care for their symptoms. He also noted that if the virus did spread in humans, the percentage might be significantly lower if preventative approaches, including, and treatments were made widely available. I'll just skip that word. So you get what it's saying? What he's saying? It's like, okay, 50%, that sounds pretty bad, but there may have been a whole bunch of other people that we just didn't know about because they didn't come to the doctor because there weren't any symptoms or the symptoms were really mild. But still, that's what I wanted to find out is this potentially deadly? And the answer is yes. Continuing, another reason for concern is that bird flu is now being detected in new animal species. In addition to outbreaks in cows, a relatively new development for the bird flu virus, which, by the way, they have a timeline for this. This is on CDC. Highlights in the history of avian influenza bird flu timeline. And it starts in 2020. It starts in March of 2020. March is kind of a big month, it seems, at least with what we're talking about in this video. But it goes through, I guess, like the mile markers, the different events that have taken place. So from 2020 until now. Okay, so there have been sporadic infections in some wild mammals. Quote, it's natural to wonder if it's only a matter of time before this virus is able to spread among humans, Dr. Roberts says. Well, let's hope not. And let's hope that this isn't the new and improved pandemic because, then we're going to have to face that test. And if we do, let's all do it better than we did last time. Please don't add to contention and divisiveness and just respect other people's, decisions. Okay. This is from UC Davis Health. Question answer, what you need to know about bird flu in humans. There's just a little bit of additional information here. What are the symptoms? Excuse me. Oh, here we go. I have it. I'm coughing. That's what this has been this whole time. What are the symptoms of bird flu? In humans, bird flu may cause illnesses similar to influenza, the flu, with fever, cough, sore throat, runny nose, and muscle aches. Less commonly, Humans may have diarrhea and vomiting, and more rarely, seizures. Well, and then, like we just read from Yale, it could also kill you. Is bird flu contagious person to person? Bird flu rarely spreads person to person. It is more commonly spread from animal to human. There's been no evidence of sustained human-to-human spread. Well, according to Yale, so far. Is it possible that bird flu has evolved in ways that would help it spread more easily among humans? There's no evidence of bird flu. There's no evidence bird flu is currently more easily spread human to human, although there's always a chance the virus may evolve to more easily transmit among humans. Most human infections with bird flu can be traced to unprotected close contact with ill or dead animals. Okay. How is bird flu treated in humans? Bird flu is treated similarly to influenza in humans. The antiviral oseltamivir or Tamiflu remains an effective option to treat humans infected with bird flu. Okay, so there you go. If you want to find out more, again, check out Christian Fire Poppy in this video right here, Pentecost 2024, The Wind and Fire Came. That's the video you'll want to watch. I'll put that video in the description box below, as well as these videos about Betelgeuse and this other like supernova event that they're expecting for this year. I don't know. I really hope it doesn't happen. 2020 sucked, and I really don't want to do that again, especially if it's worse. And I really, really don't want to experience the contention, anger, shaming, just all the things that went along with it. It was a very, very ugly year in human history. Let's be disciples of Christ. Don't add to the contention. Oh, and another thing, this is probably the most important thing. Remember, in 2020, all of a sudden, almost without warning, I guess there was a little bit of warning, but no one really knew until it happened, the temples were closed. So that meant that if you haven't gone to the temple yet to receive your initiatories, endowments, be sealed, suddenly that opportunity was taken away from you for an undetermined amount of time. And if this happens again, and if it's worse, then maybe they'll be closed even longer. So maybe that's why they were stressing so much this last general conference to go to the temple. They were really, really stressing that. Prophets see around corners, and the apostles and general authorities, they can receive inspiration too to talk about certain things. So I'm sure it wouldn't be the only reason. Like, we're getting closer to the second coming. There's going to be more of a need to be safe and protected by your temple covenants. But this might be one of those things you might want. So just, I wouldn't drag my feet if I were you in getting to the temple if you've been putting it off. Pray about it and talk to your bishop and stuff, but maybe just factor this in, that maybe that opportunity is going to be taken away for a while if we have pandemic 2.0 in the near future. Okay, well, that's going to be for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.